Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us, speak up, stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us, speak up, stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome everybody to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Very excited to be with you all today, of course, as always. But today is going to be a very interesting show. We have Adam Swart. He's the founder of Crowds on Demand. Maybe you've seen a lot of the protesting going on. I know I have. I've seen it all across Kentucky, as well as, of course, we've seen it in Minnesota. We see these violent, out-of-control protests, but we've also seen just a sheer number of coordination on it. And it led to a question of, where do these people come from? And I want you guys to join into the show today. So if you could, please, you can text us to join into the conversation. Normally, I wait till the last segment where I go through text messages. But where we have Adam Swart on, he's the founder of Crowds on Demand, the original paid protesting firm. That's right. We have a guy on that literally has engaged in paying protesters for these groups, these people, in order to drive individuals out to these protests. I want to figure out how it works. I want to know how I get paid. How do you get paid, right? We want to know how real is what we're seeing out there and what exactly all goes into it. And so we'll be talking with him about that, but maybe you want to join in to the conversation. And if you do, go ahead and shoot us over a text while we have Adam on. And that phone number is 502- Sorry, give me 1 second. 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. You're going to want to get these in while we're going through. While I have Adam on, you're going to want to be asking questions. I know I will be. Once again, I'm going to say it slower for you guys. 502-571-0970. And we'll discuss that today. Maybe a few other things here going on in Kentucky. We'll see how long that conversation takes. We're going to break here for about 1 minute and about 2 or 3 minutes here. We'll take a short 1 minute break and then be right back. So make sure you stay tuned in. Once again, the number to text to join into the conversation, 502-571-0970. We've seen the viral clips. We've seen some of the videos out there of what's going on, the craziness. Good friends of mine that are more well-known in national media landscapes, such as, Nick Sorter. He's bigger on Twitter, but he's originally here from Kentucky. Good friend of mine used to work for me. And he's been out there covering it a lot too as well. And I know from some of the things he's sending me and that I'm seeing also posted that it is pretty raucous out there in Minnesota. And that also leads to the question of, too, where does this money come from? Who's funding it? Why do they continue to do this? What's their aim? What's their goal? So that's what we'll be discussing today on Kentucky's Voice. If you like what you're hearing, though normally I don't do interviews, normally I just do commentary on Kentucky politics, you can check out the Andrew Cooperrider Show that's also here on 970 Sundays at 6 p.m. It gets replayed a few times too. And then it's also on WBNA 21 there Wednesdays at 11. And then also you can listen to the Andrew Cooperrider Show by visiting theandrewshow.com. You can check out all the different places where it's posted there on podcasting. And if you just like me and you really want to say, you know what, Andrew, I want to help you out, well, you can visit brewed.store. That's BREWED, brewed.store, to get some coffee roasted right here in Kentucky. Got fantastic coffees there, like Tyrant's Tears. I've meticulously gone out to harvest Andy Bashir's tears as he cries in order to bring you that in a coffee form called Tyrant's Tears. So you can check that out at Brewed, BREWED. .store, brewed.store. But we'll be back here in about a minute with Adam Swart and be discussing paid protesting. I'm just fascinated by this topic, quite frankly. I've seen what's going on in the news, and I had to bring him on. I had to see what is going on out there. But we'll be back here in just a short minute actually. Stay with us.
To Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. We have on Adam Swart, founder of Crowds on Demand. And you're going to want to join into this conversation. You're going to want to send us over your questions because we'll be talking about paid protesters. And so that number, 502-571-0970. Adam, can you hear me?
Hey, Andrew, so nice to be with you and the great people of Kentucky.
Absolutely. Adam, first, let's start off. So you currently own Crowds on Demand. Do you guys currently engage in paid protesting work?
Yeah, so what's correct is that we compensate demonstrators. What is incorrect about what you see on the internet is that we have anything to do with any kind of law-breaking activity, riots, vandalism, violence. So when you see that stuff, don't send me your hate because that has nothing to do with me. We are a law-abiding company. We've been around 13 years. I guarantee you we wouldn't have been around 13 years if we engaged in that sort of thing. So part of why I'm on your show today and why I do some media is because there's so much misinformation. It travels so fast out there about some of the things that we do that people have a misconception of it. What we do is focused on persuasive, respectful, effective advocacy, basically helping people convey their message in, yes, outside the box, but a respectful, law-abiding, persuasive way. You know, that's hard to ignore, yes, but that is well within the bounds of all the laws. So I just want to be very clear about that because from the get-go, because there's so much misinformation and that is I don't want your listeners to even for a second think that we have anything to do with that stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to play a little clip for you here. It's about a minute long. Not even like 10 seconds. Daniel, could you go ahead and play that clip here?
Do you have a job? Do you have a job?
Shame! I'm getting paid right now! Shame!
Okay, so that was from the Ingram angle. It was a lady there chanting shame, shame, shame. Laura asked her, do you have a job? She says, I'm getting paid right now. Adam, How true is that?
Well, I can't speak to that individual person, but a lot of people do get paid to protest. That is correct. And by the way, there are a few ways you can get paid to protest. So where we do it is actually one of the most above board ways because we compensate people directly for participating in lawful protests, PR stunts as well, audience events that comport with their views, right? And people are free to come or not come depending on whether the protest comports with their views. There are a lot of other organizations that do compensate demonstrators, but in a more clandestine way. So, for example, labor unions, they compensate demonstrators in a different way. If you are a labor union member, you are expected to go to rallies, generally on the Democratic side. And if you don't go to these rallies, then you will get worse shifts. You'll get worse treatment from the union. If you do, you're going to get better treatment and better shifts from the union. Right now, maybe some unions say we don't do this, fine, but I've heard a lot from a lot of union members that this is what they do. Okay, number two, Capitol Hill staffers, right? So if you see those press conferences on Capitol Hill, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whatever, like these people are giving these press conferences, well, ask about the people standing behind them. Ask the people who are in the crowd. A lot of times they are the staffers for the congressperson or the senator. Would you be surprised, Andrew, to know that there are 15,000 Capitol Hill staff members, both Republican and Democrat? So, I mean, that's an astounding number of people, is my impression. And so they can staff a lot of these events, and they're expected to, right? Would you want to tell the congressman, no, I'm not going to your press conference to cheer, even though that's because that's not technically part of my job? No. So the reality is that what we do is actually a little bit more above board. We say, hey, you're a conservative, we're going to compensate you to go to, pro law enforcement rallies. Maybe you're an environmentalist, we compensate you to go to environmentalist rallies, right? Now, we would never work two sides of the same issue, of course, but I'm proud to say I'm a political independent, and I'm happy to work with Republicans and Democrats where they're on the side of common sense.
So, one question that comes to mind, and I've led many a protest here in Kentucky. I've been highly involved in that side of things, especially during COVID. I put on protests where hundreds of people showed up, none of them paid to do so. I guess, though, when you talk about compensating people for showing up to a protest, it does leave one to wonder, how much do they really actually, care about that issue, or are they just showing up to get paid? I
see, I don't really buy into the premise of that, Andrew, and here's why. Right. So think about
how much, hold on real quick. How much do they get paid?
Well, that's going to depend on the particular rally. So let me get to this, right? So at least from our standpoint, we pay people enough to cover the opportunity cost of showing up, right? First of all, we're not like in the business of paying like random homeless people. So we want articulate, persuasive advocates, right? So these are people who could otherwise do gig work or other jobs, right? So we pay people enough to compensate them for the time that they miss from work as well as for childcare, right? But my question for your audience is, if somebody offered to pay you like couple $100, and I think your audience is more on the conservative side, to go to like a BLM rally, would you do it? I would think that your audience would not do it, right? And it's really interesting, and I'm not saying talk show hosts like you, but I'm about to say that a lot of people who've critiqued my business are talk show hosts who make millions of dollars, right? And they get millions of dollars, and yet you're expected.
Yeah, Adam, I'm not making millions.
Right. I'm not calling you out specifically,
no,
but I'm saying that there are talk show hosts who get millions of dollars, but who expect that you kind of believe that they're genuine about their views, right? So like, oh, well, I'm getting paid 7-8 figures and my views are genuine, but meanwhile, the guy getting paid like $100, $200, $300, oh, somehow he's only doing it for money. It doesn't really make any sense, and it's kind of juvenile.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying to a degree on that. I don't know, like an example might be, I don't really care about like Pawn Stars, for example. Don't particularly care. But I was paid extra on an episode of Pawn Stars that was filmed here in Kentucky because I had nothing to do that day, and my wife signed us up. And we didn't get paid a lot. I think we got paid like $150 each, free lunch, and for the fact we weren't doing anything that day, we went ahead and said, okay, sure, whatever. We got nothing else to do, and so we did it. We got paid, and it was great. And it's not as much that I think people who politically care about an issue would show up just because they're paid. But there are a lot of people who are maybe more agnostic that I wonder if they're hearing, how do you advertise these opportunities? Are you going to conservative groups saying, hey, there's this protest going on for conservatives. If you attend, we'll give you $100 or $200 or
Correct,
whatever.
and that's by the way, that's some of how we do it. I mean, I don't want to say everything. Like, we have lots of different ways of recruiting people, but like exactly what you described is some of what we do. Is we'll reach out to people who are already out there, because you know why, Andrew? Because those are the most effective advocates. The people who don't care about the issue at all are not going to actually be as effective, because they don't really believe it. Like, and I also think a lot of your people won't believe this, but we interview every participant for like 30 minutes, like typically on Zoom. Even if you've done an event with us before, we'll interview you like each time, so that we make sure that not only do you care about the cause, and ideally you have some personal experience with the cause, but also you share our commitment to First Amendment expression, but peaceful, law-abiding First Amendment expression. So we have a vetting process, and what we want to really kind of sort out is we want people who are passionate about the subject and who are ready to be enthusiastic advocates, but people who share our commitment to, you know, peaceful, law-abiding activism, and not people who are going to do anything, you know, that isn't consistent with those principles. So we do that. And what's interesting, Andrew, is that we've been like, every year we're trying to do more and more to like make sure our team and the people that we deploy are really persuasive, effective advocates. And our clients aren't even willing to sometimes bear all those costs. So that comes out of our profit margins to do all of that work. So I just want to let you know, like, it costs me money to do this, right? Like, it costs us, it takes out of our profits, but the reason that we do it is it gives us a higher quality product. And I can come to tell you and your listeners, like, with a straight face, that we provide these genuine people.
Well, Adam, stay with us here. We'll be back. We're coming up on a break. We'll be back in a few minutes here with Adam. If you can stay with us here. Yeah. For people who have questions, you can text those in. 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Text in your questions here that we have for Adam, as you want to go ahead and hear him answer those. We'll be discussing a little bit about, well, when we come back, where's the money come from, who's paying it, why, what's going on there. We'll be discussing that when we get back here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Once again, that number to join in, 502-571-0970. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth?
Cool.
Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooper Ryder. We have Adam Swart joining us. He is the founder of Crowds on Demand, the original paid protesting firm. If you've got questions, you want to join into the conversation, shoot us over a text, 502-571-0970. I will ask those questions as they come in. That's 502-571-0970. So, Adam, before the break, we were just kind of introducing the topic, and you're talking about how you recruit and find people and interview them to make sure. One question I have as I think about some issues, for an example, here in Kentucky, let's say we have a state level issue. Now, we'll see, I'm not saying they're paid, but we'll see a lot of, especially on the liberal side, because we are mainly a conservative state. So on the liberal side, we'll see groups like Moms Demand Action and other groups like that, bringing in people that don't actually even live in the state. And so it creates a perception to the legislators, if they don't know any better, that people in the state really care about an issue, their actual constituents, compared to the people coming in that are protesting a lot of the times. They're not their constituents. They really have no say. They're really not. Their voices shouldn't even be a concern of ours when we're making state policy. Do you guys, maybe not you or across the industry, do you care about those kinds of things, making sure that the people showing up at these events are actually the constituents involved?
We really focus on, I'll speak for Crowds on Demand. We focused on constituents. So if we want an advocacy campaign in a particular state, we will try to have constituents. And again, as I said before the break, I also try to have people who have that personal experience, right? Because not just a matter of doing the right thing, it's a matter of that's more effective, right? Because if you have constituents, they're going to actually be more informed about what's actually going on. Now, part of it is, Andrew, politicians have to be a little smarter. And I'm just tired of politicians being dumb and then blaming companies like us for why they're dumb, right? Because one of the things that they do is okay, let's just say there's some public town meeting, right? And people are talking about some issue, and 300 people are there in favor of the issue and 50 people are opposed to it, right? Well, a lot of dumb politicians will be like, oh, well, I guess the people are 6-1 in favor of it. Well, come on. We all know that the people who will protest or show up to events or whatever, that's a biased sample, right? We know that, and politicians should know that. And it's it always dumbfounds me that they don't realize that, and that there's often a silent majority who don't agree. So I'm not saying that skews conservative or liberal, but just because people are protesting doesn't mean that reflects the broader sentiment. There's this misunderstanding of what a protest is, Andrew. Protest is not a plebiscite. Protest is not a reflection of how the broader public thinks. It is a mechanism of raising awareness and publicizing concerns. So that's the goal. So I think it's very important that we understand that.
I did have a question texted in. This is, if people want to send in their questions, they can text 502-571-0970. They asked, did you have paid protesters on January 6th? I'm going to expand that and say, do you know of any paid protesters that were paid to show up on January 6th?
So look, part of why we've stayed in business 13 years is we don't get ourselves into these sort of tense type of events like Proud Boys, BLM, Antifa, January 6th, whatever, right? And I'm not trying to take a political statement for or against any political party. As I said, I'm an independent. I'm saying I don't put my people in those type of situations that are inherently going to be tense, whether you think the cause is good or not. It's the same reason we're not involved in the ICE matter, right? We're not there's a lot we don't do, even though it would be lucrative.
Are there firms out there that do it?
Well, so that would just be speculation on my part. I mean, the question that the listener asked was about January 6th, right? Obviously, a lot of the theories about that have been expounded upon greatly by others, right? And let me just make one statement, which is that I um I'm a civil libertarian and I support law and order, and I think those things go together. And I do worry that I oppose using law enforcement to target any particular group due to politics. And I think we've had too much of it. So, if you don't mind, Andrew, I'm going to let your listeners know that one thing I'm promoting is called a protester's bill of rights and responsibilities, right? Because one thing that and an authority's bill of rights and responsibilities, because I think one thing that January 6th and BLM and all this stuff shows is that what we need is consistent regulation. And consistent penalties on protesters that are enforced in an ideologically neutral way. Because people on the right feel that January 6th protesters were unfairly treated compared to BLM. I know that there are people on the left who feel that ICE protesters are being unfairly treated as opposed to other protesters, right? So I I'm not taking a position on that other than to say, I think number one, you need to be judged only on your actions, right? If you vandalize, you need to be punished. If you create violence, you need to be punished. If you block off a major highway without a permit to do that, you need to be punished, right? So it doesn't matter what the cause is, right, left, Israel, Palestine, BLM, MAGA, right? At the end of the day, the penalties have to be the same. And it is very disturbing that I've seen officials both on the left and the right seem to want to go after protesters who disagree with them more than protesters who agree with them, because that's a fundamental disrespect of what the First Amendment stands for. So I guess I'm answering that in a circumspect way, but it's important to say that, like, I support the First Amendment and I support people who disagree with me being able to speak. And I think we don't have enough of that right now.
We've got a few more questions that came in. We've got about 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. So you can answer this one in about 2 minutes. That'd be great. If people want to join into the conversation, they can text 502-571-0970. Question is, what do you do when one of your employees does become violent, if they do?
Well, I have great news for you, which is that in 13 years, we've never had that problem. And I give credit to myself and my team for a few things. Number one, and I've referred to a few of them earlier in the piece. Number one, interviewing people, all participants. Number two, rejecting events that are tension producing. Those are basically the two biggest things. And number three, rejecting even events that might be lucrative, but where you're put in a situation that is very tense. We will often reject those offhand. So really, and I hope that this will continue to be the case, but we have a really good record of this. And part of it is, like, I'm not trying to create the largest company in the world here. I would rather be selective about the causes that I take on than just take every piece of business that comes my way.
So, yeah, we've got a few more questions. Adam, I hope you can stay with us here as we go into the next segment. Some people have sent in some other questions. And if you want to send them in, you can text 502-571-0970. I do have a really quick question. We got a minute left here, Adam. If you can't answer it in this minute, we'll just go to the break and we can return to it. But who's paying for this?
For what?
For these protesters, for Crowds on Demand or anything else? What are the groups?
Let me just be clear, Andrew, that both sides do it. We've worked with conservatives and liberals. More broadly, I know that there's money on both sides. Like, let's get out of this juvenile idea of saying that people agree with us are all genuine and people who don't agree with us are being paid. Let's just understand there's money behind we agree with and movements we disagree with. MAGA, Tea Party, civil rights, gay rights, it's all, there's money behind it and genuine sentiment behind it. So let's stop trying to accuse our other people of being people who don't agree with us of being bought and paid for. I mean, it's such a juvenile argument. Let's focus on the substance of the argument.
We'll be back here in just a few short minutes. We'll see you guys here very shortly.
to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Have on a very interesting guest right now, Adam Schwartz. He's the founder of Crowds on Demand. People have been texting in their questions here, and you can join in too if you have a question. He's going to be with us for one more segment, so if you have questions, try to get them in. 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. Now, Adam, to kick us off here a little bit, we had a few different questions come in, some of them a little bit harder probably to answer than others, but here's one that came in. It's a comment, I guess, so I guess you can respond to it. It's a sad day in our society when people are paid to support any cause. It's akin to pimping. I'm sure that's a sentiment some people have, but Adam, what would you say back to that?
Would you pay your lawyer? Would you pay your congressman? Would you pay your
I'm sure a lot of people would say they wouldn't pay their congress.
Fair. But the point being that I don't understand this idea that people should go out and do a ton of work and not get compensated, right? So if you look at advocacy groups, the lawyers who advocate on the left, like ACLU, or on the right, Heritage, right? They're all paid, right? And why are they paid is because you need to get paid to be able to effectively do a good job because you have other competing priorities. And my other question, I'll just give a little historical anecdote to your listener, right? Before the early 1900s, members of the British Parliament were not paid for their services, right? So who do you think became a member of British Parliament? It would only be accessible to the landed gentry, people who were very wealthy, right? And they were in Parliament for two reasons. One, ego, and two, preservation of their existing wealth, right? So here's the problem. If you don't compensate people to show up, then the people showing up are going to be disproportionately well-to-do retirees and college students. Why? Because those are the groups that have the lowest opportunity cost to show up. They don't have the responsibilities. They don't have, jobs, all of this sort of thing. They don't have childcare to deal with, right? Whereas ask yourself, how often do you see fast food workers, hourly wage workers, janitors, maids being able to show up and express their views, but are they not entitled to views? So I think that it's I understand that people have this sentiment oh my God, paid protesting bad, but it's when you actually really think about it, you should be paid for doing that job like any other job.
So, speaking of one of these things, speaking of, the people, the paying, protesting, everything else, so let's say I'm having a protest and I need 200 people to show up. What does it cost?
Well, it really depends, Andrew, and I'll tell you why, is that it depends on what the subject is, where the location is, how long, the event is going to go. As you can imagine.
Well, here, let me give you an example. Let's say I want protesters on either pro 2A against 2A, let's say.
I don't know whether we'd be eager to touch that issue.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It could be a contentious issue. Let's say.
Now, where I am willing to touch the issue is where it becomes more of a violation of rights. Like if there's a town that's adopting unconstitutional bans on guns, right, restrictions, then I would stand up for the gun owners' rights. But I don't want to get into the middle of this sort of yelling match debate. What I would
let me give you a different example. Let's say here's a hot issue in Kentucky right now: pre-K for all. Okay, so let's say somebody's for it, somebody's against it. Okay, and we say we want to hold a rally at the Frankfurt Capitol, middle of a Wednesday. That's when legislators are in session. So you want to make sure you're not doing it on Friday or the weekend. You want them to see it, obviously. And so we want to do it at 2:00 on a Wednesday. We want 200 people to show up.
And I can't tell you.
And it'll be outside.
And that okay, great. Well, I can't tell you what side of the issue I'd be on in that because I think there are probably good arguments on both
Yeah,
sides
yeah. It doesn't matter what
for you
side.
to
Either side could hire you
right.
for
So
it.
so that's a good example. So it would definitely be in the in the tens of thousands of dollars. I couldn't say exactly how much at this point. I'd have to
Yeah, more
evaluate
specific,
it.
but you can ballpark
But
it.
it
It
would
would be
definitely be in the tens of thousands. It wouldn't be more and it wouldn't be less. So, the idea would be, and now would what we typically do in that is we provide signs, banners, flyers. We create an organization surrounding it or bolster your existing organization. So yeah, I mean that's like a great kind of event that we probably would be involved in because it's a both sides probably have some merits to their argument and I'd obviously have to study the issue. I don't know what my personal stance is on it at this exact moment, but
sure.
it's a good example of the type of thing we might be involved in. Yes.
So, because somebody had asked in their texts, "What's your ROI?" And so, I have to imagine, like any business, it's probably 10 to 20% or so. I mean, that's typical O&P for most business, overhead and profit. But obviously, a lot of businesses don't like to open up about how much money they make
I
off
mean, I
every
think the bigger
product.
focus that one thing that, like I said earlier on in the program, I do want to like advise your listener that one thing that we've done is it's reduced our profit margin is to have these detailed vetting to make sure that the people are really passionate about the cause. Because I think that's a really important thing. And even though not every client is willing to pay for what that entails, we are. So that kind of does come out of our margin because we've tried to push clients to say, oh, you should pay more for this. And they're like, no, I don't. Some clients don't care, which I think is really unfortunate because honestly, to me, the most effective advocates are advocates who are passionate.
And here's another question. It actually came in from one of the other co-hosts. Just messaged me because he's listening in and he wanted to know something. I'm getting in a lot of questions. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
He said, "What percentage of clients do you take on that you think are conservative versus what percentage are liberal?" And he says, and he really didn't answer at the end of the day who was funding his activities as far as that goes. And I guess it's activity by activity, who's going to fund it per se.
I understand.
But on the client's question, rough ballpark, what do you think your percentage is conservative
Okay,
versus
let me
liberal?
just answer it this way. We, protesting is naturally an oppositional activity. So in a place like California, we work with a lot more conservatives than we do liberals because the liberals are in control, right? Now, in a place that might be more dominated by conservatives, right, we might work more with liberals because the conservatives are in control, right? So it really depends. And let me also just address a part of the question, which he didn't exactly ask, but I think a lot of people wonder is what are my views? I'm an independent and I evaluate things based on is there sort of a common sense element in it? So, for example, like I like healthcare. I believe people shouldn't die due to lack of access to healthcare. That's a liberal position. On law enforcement, I believe we should not defund the police. I think that we need strong, responsible, well-funded law enforcement, right? So I think that we work with left and the right, and I don't have to agree with you 100%. For example, when the cryptocurrency industry started contacting us and we started working with that industry maybe 8 or 9 years ago at this point, I didn't know much about it, but I saw that they were being really discriminated against by the financial system. So I said, look, I don't necessarily 100% support everything, but I see that they're not being treated fairly, and I like to stand up for the underdog. So we often like to work for the David versus Goliath. We work for the startup companies against big tech, the smaller movements against the bigger movements, because people who can't afford massive lobbying operations and massive like infrastructure like that can often still afford to hire us. So we're an effective form of advocacy.
I have a few more questions here coming in. One person asked, what do you consider the difference between a rally and a protest?
Well, I mean, it's really subjective, but I consider a protest being something where you're focused on letting someone know that you're really against something that they're doing. whereas a rally might be a rally. You may have a rally for a bill. You may have a protest against a perceived act of injustice. But it really is subjective.
So one person sent in a message saying a rebuttal to your point about if we don't pay people to show up, then, and we've got about 2 minutes here, a rebuttal to your point about if we don't pay people to show up, only the wealthy or well-to-do, they said rebuttal were the Sons of Liberty paid during the revolution.
Well, I would inform your listener that a lot of the revolutionaries were actually quite well-to-do people, just so that you know. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, a lot of the leaders and the followers were actually quite well-to-do. So that's actually most revolutionaries in the course of history, from Lenin to George Washington to all these people, they tend to actually be quite well off, or at least bourgeois. So yeah, I mean, that's, so again, the fact, there's two debates. Like, of course, bourgeois, the wealthy, have the right to express their views too. But I'm just saying that, yeah, like this, though a lot of the revolutionaries were very wealthy or like quite well off. They weren't necessarily like the working class, just so that you know.
Well, Adam, I know you have to take off. If people want to continue this conversation, we'll probably discuss a little bit after you sign off, but don't worry, nothing I wouldn't say to your face. But people can text in 502-571-0970. After this break, I'll talk a little bit about this issue and then maybe talk about some Kentucky issues as far as that goes. But Adam, I thank you so much for your time. You're founder of Crowds on Demand. If people want to hire you, where do they go?
Crowdsondemand.com.
Crowdsondemand.com. So if you need protesters, you need people to attend a rally, you want it to make it seem like people like you at your local birthday party, go ahead and reach out to Adam. Crowdsondemand.com. Adam, thank you so much for your time. But we'll be back here in just a minute. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you want to continue to talk here about this issue, you can text 502-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
All right, thanks,
Kentucky's
Andrew.
Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers.
Guys.
But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. We were been talking to this show here, Adam Swear. He's the founder of Crowds on Demand. We were talking about paid protesters, paid people who show up at rally, people who protest, how the industry works a little bit. He was sharing his insights. He was saying his company doesn't engage in some of the more contentious ones that we've been seeing, like ICE, or he said January 6th and some others. But there was some back and forth, and some people asked some questions about, and I did too as well, about the ethics of paid protesting, whether or not that's really representatory of how people feel. Now, I will say something, not as much, not in defense of Adam per se, but just a fact. I have put together several protests and rallies, obviously for conservative causes. There is a bit of a problem here, okay? So it depends on who you're protesting. So for an example, when we were protesting something that the governor did, well, we can protest up at the Kentucky Capitol. There on the Capitol grounds is the governor's mansion. The Capitol grounds is a place to protest. And so you can protest right outside where Bashir chooses to live. Once again, if he lived maybe in a private home, private street, I don't know if I'd want to necessarily protest in front of his house there per se, but it depends. But at least in this case, he lives in a place called the People's House, the People's Mansion. There, he lives in the Kentucky Governor's Mansion, which if you've never been to the Capitol, understand you got the main Capitol building, and it's got like a rotund and a grassy lawn in front. And literally across a one-lane kind of access road that goes around the Capitol is the house. So you're literally standing on the Capitol grounds and in front of the Capitol building on the lawn, and he can see it. And so when you're protesting something the governor does, well, you can do it on a weekend and still have him see it and still make kind of an impact. The problem with protesting when you have the legislature is our legislature is only in session January through March every year. Well, April, March. Every year. And typically it's kind of cold. Your protests have to be held outside. And importantly, they don't work on Fridays. So you have to have it Monday through Thursday. And if you want them to see it, it's got to be, after 10 a.m. and before 4 p.m. because they don't work Fridays. So, that's when you have to have the protests if you want them to see it. You can also hold protests, of course, inside the Capitol building as well. Now, I can say that on particularly contentious issues such as COVID vaccine mandates or something like that, I've been able to, just through social media, emails, texts, reaching out, be able to drive several hundred people to show up and protest on those issues. However, there are some issues that are a little more intricate, but absolutely affect everyday people's lives. And I can think of an example such as there was a point where, and I'm going to use this example because it actually will also argue against paid protesting in a second, but there was a bill a few years ago that wanted every single graduate of high school here in Kentucky to be a graduation requirement that child fill out a FAFSA form, the Federal Application for Free Student Aid, FAFSA form. And that's a college form you fill out to get free money to go to college, in case you guys don't know what it is. And the reason why it's such an issue with that as a graduation requirement, one, first and foremost, when you fill out the FAFSA form, you have to disclose the property that your family owns, because it's determining not just the individual student's financial ability to pay for college, but also the family's ability to pay for college as well. So if the parents are wealthier, the kid doesn't get as much money as a kid whose parents aren't as wealthy. And so part of that application process is to disclose what your parents make. Now, do I think that's particularly fair? Probably not. The child's becoming an adult. It really, this idea that it's a government policy that parents pay for their kids' college, even though they're over the age of 18 and they're an adult and they're making their own decisions, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever. So that was the first reason, is because that information, property ownership, what you own, where you have money at, everything else, that is typically information protected by the Fourth Amendment. And so what they were doing was if this had passed, it would have required every single parent of a public school kid to disclose financial information that otherwise would be protected by the Fourth Amendment to the federal government. And I had a big issue with that, and hopefully you see why. Now, a lesser issue, but still an issue I had was if you require this FAFSA form and you come back to these kids and you tell them, hey, look, we're going to give you a free $5,000 a year if you go to college. They may be like, well, I wasn't going to go to college because it was $10,000 a year, but now it's only $5,000 a year. I'll just pull out a loan and pay for it. And then these kids end up failing and not completing school. And I think that if a person really wants to go to college and they need to figure out how to pay for it, and if you Google, how do I pay for college? The first result is FAFSA, fill out a FAFSA form. And so if a kid's unable to Google that and then see that and then fill out the FAFSA form, they probably shouldn't be going to college in the first place. And they probably wouldn't normally have went to college. Therefore, it's encouraging kids to take on debt. Because if they wouldn't normally go to college until you told them, well, we'll pay for 5 of the 10 grand, they're probably not going to complete the college. They're probably going to go into debt. Just that was a minor issue. But I bring that up because that is the kind of issue that may or may not drive people out to a protest in the middle of the week. It may or may not cause a reaction. Now, so I understand the concept of saying, well, if we can pay people to show up that care about this issue, then maybe we can make it clear that this is an important issue. That being stated, I think you have to be somewhat unaware of human behavior if you do not think for 1 second that all these people really care about the issue and they otherwise would have shown up, they just need to pay for childcare. There's people out there, I'm sure, that are doing this just for the money, and it's probably not a small percentage. It really isn't. But also to push back on the idea that, well, they wouldn't show up for a protest here. What they would do, and how we did stop that bill from passing, was people called into the legislature to leave a message for their representatives saying, don't pass this bill. So there is an accessible way for them to protest and take action visibly in a way that legislators see that does stop legislation, even on more intricate issues that wouldn't necessarily drive people out in person. And so there is those tools available that don't require you to show up to something. Some of the texts, I've gotten some more text in too. And they said, I believe most of the clients are corporate NGOs and supposed nonprofits. I would say that's accurate. Yeah. Because as he alluded to, a couple hundred people on a Wednesday afternoon to show up at the Kentucky Capitol would cost you tens of thousands of dollars. That's what he said. I don't know of a single true grassroots organization in Kentucky that has tens of thousands of dollars. I don't know of a single one. I know of liberal ones because this goes into the whole entire ecosystem of liberal, the liberal side of advocacy compared to the conservative side. There's a different flow of money there because, that's a discussion probably for a later time. But essentially, the powers that be on the liberal side support the grassroots activists because they want what they want. They want what the corporate interests and everybody else wants. They want the government to spend more money. They want them to line the pockets of corporations whether they realize it or not. That's what they want. Conservatives are normally protesting over stopping the government from doing something, stopping the government from spending money. And nobody's making money off the government not handing out money other than the people who aren't going to be taxed as much. So there's just not as much money out there for conservative activists to be able to push certain things. But to this person's point about NGOs and everything else, I think that's fairly accurate as far as it goes. Because you got to think, okay, especially for the kinds of issues he said he would cover. So he wouldn't cover super contentious issues. He showed some issues about doing pro-Second Amendment stuff. So that means that these issues are generally probably more corporate interest issues that once again are intricate and normally people wouldn't give two cares about either way. And so, hey, if I can shell out 10, 20 grand, I mean, shoot, in Kentucky, we spend tens of millions, not we, but lobbyists spend tens of millions of dollars a year lobbying the legislators. Our lobbyists count. The amount of registered lobbyists outnumbers our legislators in Kentucky by about 3 to 1 was the last number I saw. 3-1. There's 3 lobbyists every 1 legislator in Kentucky. There's a lot of money being spent to influence these legislators, and dropping 20 grand on a little protest or people getting together. That seems like a drop in the bucket when you consider how much they're really spending. And so on those intricate issues, or issues that has a lot of corporate interests, and if we had more time, I'd go through some examples of, I think, issues that this would be about. Paying 10, 20 grand so a couple hundred people show up and it makes it seem like they really, really, really care about something, probably is pretty worthwhile. And, like I said, I understand that he said something about how he interviews people and makes sure that they actually care about the issue. But once again, you're sitting there in an interview. You're quote unquote interviewing to get paid, a couple $100 to show up to a protest for a few hours a day. You might lie. You certainly have a profit incentive to do so. And I think that's normal kind of human behavior. Also got in here, someone said liberals get theirs paid by federal taxpayer in Minnesota. That's actually more true than you think it is. Matt Walsh, his episode he did yesterday, his producers had infiltrated some of the Minnesota anti-ICE groups to find out where they get their money, who's paying them. And one of them linked to $75,000 from a nonprofit given to one of these anti-ICE groups. And that nonprofit received $100,000 from the Minnesota government. That was a federal grant that was flowed through the Minnesota government to them. So it was federal tax dollars given $100,000 to this nonprofit that then turned around and gave $75,000 to this Defend the 812, I think is whatever the area code is for Minnesota phone numbers. Defend the 812, I think it was called, which is an anti-ICE group. And they gave them 75 grand. And so money is very fungible. You can easily draw a line of seeing how taxpayer dollars end up paying for this group that was putting together paid protesters. And of course it's got to. In some way, somehow, the taxpayers got to be paying for these protests, because if you're protesting the government, you want something from the government. Somebody has a financial interest in getting that from the government, and their financial interest means that the government is most likely going to give them more money. And that money only comes from one place, and that is your pocket. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on Kentucky's Voice. I've been your host, Andrew Cooperrider. If you want to check out my show that I also do called The Andrew Cooperrider Show, you can check it out right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6 p.m., on WBNA 21, Wednesdays at 11, or you can head over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com, and see where you can listen to the podcast. Till next week, I'll be seeing you.